I'm so glad that you joined us today for Biblically Grounded. I'm your host, Clayton Van Huss. Now, I don't know about you, but I thoroughly enjoyed our discussion last week with Dr. David Falk from Ancient Egypt and the Bible, talking about the Ark of the Covenant as sacred furniture. So the Ark, we learned, was a chest, a chest made of acacia wood, and then covered in gold foil, a gold leaf, kind of like a picture frame. You see those antique picture frames that are made of wood and they've got the gold on them? Well, that's how the Ark of the Covenant was made. It had two poles underneath, and then on top was the mercy seat. Now, the mercy seat was the place from which God spoke to Moses or to the high priest. He would speak to his people from beneath or between the wings of the cherubim. Now, that might sound like just a cool little phrase where we're talking about, we have this image of the cherubim on top of the Ark of the Covenant, on top of this mercy seat, but it's more than just a turn of a phrase. It means more. It means more than just, oh yeah, there are winged beings on top of this thing, and God speaking from out of there. No, there's the idea of sacred space, and so that's what we're going to be looking at in today's episode of Biblically Grounded. We're going to go beyond the idea of sacred furniture. We're going to go beyond the idea of a chest in which the Ten Commandments could be held. We're going to be looking at what was going on top of the ark. You have these cherubim, and they're not wooden. They're not wood covered in gold foil. They're actually gold, pure gold, hammered gold into this beautiful design. And so the Ark of the Covenant was certainly a stunning thing to see, but it was more than something dazzling to look at. It was an object, an item that was used by God and that served a specific purpose and function, and we're going to be looking a bit at that today. So I hope you enjoy what's coming.
Discover ancient truths and walk through history at the Biblically Grounded Archaeology Experience, a family-friendly event in Bristol, Virginia, July 11th and 12th. Join world-renowned expert Dr. Scott Stripling and many more archaeologists as they unveil fascinating discoveries that confirm the truth of God's Word. Dig deep, grow in faith, and bring the whole family to the Biblically Grounded Archaeology Experience, where the past speaks to the present.
So last week's episode, it really, there was so much more I wanted to cover that we decided, let's just make it a two-parter. So we skipped across a lot of stuff that we really want to come back and focus in on. We're with Dr. David Falk, once again, Ancient Egypt and the Bible, and we're talking about the Ark of the Covenant in its Egyptian context, which just happens to be the name of Dr. Falk's book. Dr. Falk, welcome back to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you are quite welcome. Thanks for doing this. This is fun stuff. Everybody wants to know about the Ark of the Covenant. So probably the single most famous artifact in history, the history of the world, unless you can think of a more famous one.
It is the most well-described artifact in antiquity.
Okay, I did not know that.
There is no artifact in antiquity that has more text basically written about it from ancient times.
Of course, I guess we have descriptions in the book of Exodus. We have descriptions. We have talk of it all throughout.
Descriptions in Exodus. So it's the best described artifact of ancient times.
Okay. Well, can you take a moment then and give us a description? As if I've never seen the Ark of the Covenant. Well, I mean, I've never seen the Ark, but if I've never seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, what does the Ark of the Covenant look like?
Okay, the Ark of the Covenant is essentially an acacia wood box that has been covered in gold foil on the outside. We're not told if it's inside and out, but it's on the outside at least. Okay, it has a lid on it, which we call the mercy seat. The ancient word for it translates better to lid. Okay, but it has two figures on top of it, cherubim that face each other with wings stretched out. 4 rings made of gold were placed on the feet for carrying poles, a pair of carrying poles.
Okay, so those are placed on the feet. Oftentimes, we've got pictures and paintings where they're on the side. In fact, I think Indiana Jones puts his poles through the side.
Most reconstructions put them on the side. Now
why
here's
would
the interesting thing.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get to that. Other ritual furniture for the tabernacle, they are on the side, like for the altar of burnt offering, for the altar of the showbread, and for the incense altar, they're on the side. But for the Ark of the Covenant, they are on the feet. And there's a really good reason why that is. You want, it's a difference between carrying for stability versus carrying for show. If you carry something for stability, you put them on the pole rings on the side. If you're carrying something for show, you want to get it as high up as possible.
Right.
So you put the rings on the feet to elevate the item so everyone sees it.
Yeah, so the rings are at the feet, and so the poles are on the shoulders then of
They're on the shoulders.
So it's up there. People can see these cherubim, these gold cherubim, and that's
it's going to be covered. It's going to be covered in a red dolphin skin shroud.
Okay.
Which we do actually have reference to in one Egyptian text, where a box was. It was happened during the campaign of Tutmosis III, where Tutmosis III got this elaborate chest that had this red shroud over it. So this is something that is extant in extra biblical literature.
Right.
But they would see the Ark of the Covenant covered in the shroud as it's being carried. Because of its elevation, they would know what it is.
Okay, but it was too holy to look upon. Is that why they're covering it then?
It's not meant to be viewed.
Right.
Not meant to be viewed by non-Levitical priests.
Okay.
Or by people who are not Levitical priests.
Right. So the Ark of the Covenant is a chest. It's got legs. It's got poles for carrying it. It's covered in gold leaf, like a picture frame, like a gilded picture frame.
Some sections of it are made of basically pure gold, like the cherubim.
Right, and so they are made of hammered gold. That's the
made of hammered gold.
You're tapping that out in a mold. But see, when you think
not
of
in a mold.
No, not in a mold.
Formed.
Okay.
Cold formed.
Oh, okay. Because
so this is what you can do.
Yeah.
This is something that's you can do with gold because it's so soft and malleable. You can hammer it into a single form.
Yeah.
So as long as the gold was ritually pure, because they weren't doing casting,
right?
You can hammer it into a shape that you desire.
Right. Now, so wasn't like the funerary mask of Tutankhamun was hammered, right?
Yes.
So it can look that beautiful, that finished.
It can look that stunning, yeah. Oh, yeah, because hammering doesn't actually make gold look more dowdy.
Right.
It burnishes it.
Okay.
It burnishes it. So it makes it more shiny, more polished, more attractive.
So what kind of form would these cherubim have had? Because there are so many different views, different ideas. What was a cherub? What would they have looked like coming out? Like if Bezalel had designed this thing and he, had been a craftsman in Egypt, what is he coming up with here? What do they look like?
They are most likely women with wings for arms. Okay. Now, the way the cherubim are designed tends to follow the orientation of the wings. If the wings are swept forward, cherubim tend to be presented in a anthropomorphic form, a human form,
right?
And usually a woman. Okay. If the wings are swept back, they're usually leonine.
Right. Yeah. And you see this like, and when you say leonine, you're talking about the Sphinx look,
Lions.
the body of a lion, the head of a man, and
No, no, not a sphinx. An
no,
actual lion.
actual lions.
Actual lions.
All right. So when they're,
Sphinx or something else.
yeah, okay. Well, what is the difference?
Okay, a sphinx is the symbol of royal power.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's a symbol of the king.
Okay.
It's essentially the embodiment of the royal power of the king.
Mm-hmm.
They're not a divine entity on their own usually.
Right.
Whereas, say, cherubim or their analogs in Egypt were seen as divine entities.
Okay.
So they are akin to like lower spirits or angels.
All right. And that's why we see cherubim, or we see sphinxes wearing crowns and cherubim. So the cherubim, their wings, they're coming to places where they're touching. I think like the red granite sarcophagus of Tutankhamun, you know, he has a lot of interesting things. So we've got the wings touching, and
you also find them on the canopic shrine of Tut as well.
Okay, so yeah, that's a common thing, and I think Ezekiel touches on this when he talks about the throne, the chariot of God, the four cherubim with their wings reaching and touching each other and creating that sacred space.
Those are throne cherubim. Yeah, those are throne cherubim. You do see this on, say, the thrones of kings of ancient Egypt. But these were specific guardian spirits that were, well, spirit critters that were used to keep sacred space sacred.
Yeah, so that's what we've got on top of the Ark of the Covenant.
Satan was a throne cherubim.
Yes, Ezekiel, once again, Ezekiel, the covering cherub. Wow.
Yeah, he was the covering cherub. That's a throne cherub.
And throne cherubim are they're common in the ancient Near East. You see them up through, the Phoenicians. Astarte, I think, sat on a throne with lion type, Leonid type guardians, but always those armrests. We see that ivory.
Yeah, you see them on the armrests. Yeah.
Yeah, all sorts of.
You see them on the palanquin thrones of kings. Oh yeah, they're all over the place.
Yeah, so this is a common thing.
Very common.
So what we're seeing on the Ark of the Covenant is imagery that is divine, that is sacred, that is a separation. I mean, I think of the cherubim, the living creatures around the throne who sing holy, holy, holy. They're singing separate, separate, do not touch, do not touch, do not touch. And that's what we have going on with these cherubim.
Yeah, exactly. We see the same motif in the fall, in the Garden of Eden.
Exactly.
When, I mean, the whole point of God planting the Garden of Eden was to have his special space where he could interface with man. And then man falls, and then we get this division of sacred and profane.
Right.
Where the cherubim now guard the garden, drive out the impurity.
Right.
And mankind goes out into the profane world.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're taking that with them. All these cultures in the Near East, you see this motif from the Lamassu that we see in, Assyria to, just all throughout. There are these guardians. Yeah. If you're going to go into a temple or a palace or sometimes even city gates, you got to walk between the guardians. I'm reminded as a kid, I remember watching the Never-Ending Story, and I don't know if you're aware of that if you're familiar.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, there's a scene where a brave knight is going through a canyon, and these two big sphinxes, they look like Greek sphinxes, and they're massive, and he has to go between them if he's worthy, and he's not. So of course they zap him with laser bolts from their eyes. But that stuck with me as a kid, and that's what's going on in these places. Not laser bolts from their eyes, but the idea of you're coming.
Well, there are death rays.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
This. Tell me.
Okay, the Uraeus, because the cherubim don't work alone.
Right. You got the seraphim.
They work in pairs with seraphim. Okay.
Yeah.
The cherubim keep the space within their wings holy. The seraphim drive out the holiness,
Oh.
or drive out the unholiness. Okay.
Okay.
On Egyptian furniture, this is why you have the cobra frieze
Mm-hmm.
on all these boxes,
Right.
and facing outwards.
And on Tutankhamun's throne, you've got them right there in his armrests.
Tombs, you find it everywhere. But the purpose of these cobras was to drive out unholy things, and they would do it with a blast of fire, like a death ray.
Wow. You think that maybe could come from the idea of the spitting cobra, or yeah. Wow. That is fascinating.
That's the basis of the analogical language used for the seraphim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The fiery flying serpent. That's
Giraffe is a fiery serpent.
That is fascinating. Seeing these motifs. And so we see them in the Ark of the Covenant. Now let me ask you, why does the Ark of the Covenant need a sacred space? Why does it need to be a holy item? Why does it need to be kept from the profane?
Because of the idea that God is holy.
Mm-hmm.
And God basically cannot exist in the presence of sin.
Right.
Yeah, God will exist, but sin won't.
Right. Oh, yeah.
It will meet summary judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, holy space is there to protect us from summary judgment.
Sure, that makes sense. We are, by our very nature, sinful. We are unholy. Without the blood of Christ, we are in danger, terrible danger before the throne of God.
Absolutely.
And so I think of Moses, Joshua going to speak to God. And the Bible tells us he speaks from beneath the wings or between the wings of the cherubim. And so they're coming to the sacred space. God is addressing them. We have this later put into the Holy of Holies of the temple. Of course, it goes into the tabernacle. But it's kept in this place where there are other cherubim. There are sacred guardians everywhere.
Yeah.
And only
it's concentric zones of holiness.
Yeah. And the high priest goes in.
You've got at the very center, you've got the Ark of the Covenant with the wings of the cherubim. Okay. Then you've got the veil around the Holy of Holies, which also has motifs of cherubim.
Right. Woven right.
And then you have the two statues of the cherubim over that.
Yes. Which interestingly,
you've got the inner court of the temple, which also has motifs of cherubim.
Yes. Yeah. They're on the walls.
And then you've got the Temenos wall.
Yeah. The whole thing. It's everywhere.
Holy.
Do
the
not
holiest
touch.
center.
Yeah.
It's multiplying holiness.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've also got, like, within the temple, you start to see that garden imagery as well, back to the garden of God. This is fascinating. And I think, I try to think when I pray, when I go before the Lord, that I am going into this place where it is holy, holy, holy. And only through our high priest, Jesus Christ, can we even go. And then he tells us, do it boldly through Jesus.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Because Jesus didn't just cover up sin like the old sacrificial system. He did away with it.
He paid it. It's done.
It's forgiven.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, how cool. How amazing it is to have a God who has done that for us, to have the Savior himself, our high priest, who allows us into that sacred space, takes our petitions before the God of the universe. And so this Ark of the Covenant that we find so fascinating, is it merely a picture of this, or is it more, or was it at one time more?
It served to be a flip the late Bronze Age notions of divinity on its head. That's what it did. You have to understand that in the late Bronze Age, people thought gods were only in one place at one time. that you had to care for them with human hands. You had to feed them, feed their idols, clothe them, put them to bed. Because the Ark of the Covenant was a sacred shrine without an idol, it took those concepts and it inverted them so that God never leaves the throne. There's no idol there. He can't be cared for by human hands. He cannot be fed. He cannot be clothed. He is utterly unique. But it also served as the sacred vessel from God's appointed mountain at Sinai up until he entered the Shekinah glory, enters the temple in Jerusalem, and then finally, when the veil is rent at the crucifixion, God goes out into the world and invades profane space, making it sacred once again.
It's a conquering.
It's a conquering.
It's amazing.
God conquers the sin and the profane.
Oh, wow. That is
it's really profound.
There is hope in that, and there's beauty in that. And that's the thing about God. We see all together, we see form and function. We see art, and yet we see practicality. We see more than that, though. We see this function where God has entered into this universe he created, that this profane space, right? Where we exist, where we muddy everything up. And he comes from his sacred into ours.
It's one long redemption arc.
That is
from creation to consummation.
Yeah. That is such a cool concept, and that's not an accident. That's not.
Oh no.
The human mind does not come up with that stuff. It is beautiful. It is love. It is so many things. We've got about a minute left, Dr. Falk. Would you care to just give us, as you've studied the Ark of the Covenant, what has how has that helped you in your spiritual walk?
It just allows me to see the plan, the beauty, that none of this is an accident. All of it was intentional, and God condescended to us. He came down and he didn't say to us, hey, you got to understand everything about me before you start worshiping me. You got to understand I'm a Trinity. You got to understand that I'm transcendent. You got to understand all these things. No. He doesn't do that. He condescends to our level.
Yeah.
And uses what we understand in the moment and transforms that understanding.
Yeah. That is really
great hope.
Yeah. From the time he spoke to Abraham, and Abraham, who is this? And Moses, who are you? Who do I tell them sent me? And these things go on, and through his constant revelation to us, he's, and still the depth of the mysteries excite me. But
and there's so much depth.
Yeah, there is.
We'll never get to the end of it.
No,
we're still discovering new things today.
No,
that's exciting. It's really exciting.
Yeah, and we have eternity to probe those depths, and we'll never get there.
Nope.
Dr. Falk, thank you so much for taking the time to do 2 episodes on the Ark of the Covenant with us. We really appreciate your time.
It was my pleasure.
Discover ancient truths and walk through history at the Biblically Grounded Archaeology Experience, a family-friendly event in Bristol, Virginia, July 11th and 12th. Join world-renowned expert Dr. Scott Stripling and many more archaeologists as they unveil fascinating discoveries that confirm the truth of God's Word. Dig deep, grow in faith, and bring the whole family to the Biblically Grounded Archaeology Experience, where the past speaks to the present.
Wow, that was some really exciting stuff. I've personally been very interested in the idea of cherubim, the sacred spaces. I've wrote a lot of papers in school and some studies on these things. I have thoughts that I want to continue with in my studies in the future, because the idea of the cherubim, it's not just angels we're talking about something else entirely. And I hope that you got what they meant to the people of the ancient Near East, especially the Hebrew people coming out of Egypt, and getting to know their God and getting to understand what He had for them. And of course, with Dr. Falk, we were able to take a look at this idea of the cherubim on the mercy seat and this sacred space where God spoke to His people. But He still speaks to His people. He speaks to you and me, of course, through His Word, through the Bible, and through His Son, Jesus Christ. And so today you can go through, you don't have to have a high priest go to the ark for you. You have one in Jesus Christ. Anyway, thanks for watching Biblically Grounded.